right, so Robert, you've written this article named Convoy about the convoy protesters in Canada, and there's US truckers as well on both sides of the border. And one of the sentences that I think really encapsulates the whole thing is this: the convoy protesters want freedom from senseless, unscientific COVID restrictions and mandates, and freedom from a ruling class that ignores their own rules and treats everyday Canadians with derision and disrespect by painting what are truly mostly peaceful protesters as members of a deranged fringe of white supremacists. Instead of using the protests as a way to save face while lifting their senseless COVID policies, Canada's leaders have doubled down yet again. That is too easy to do today when the worst that happens to politicians is that they lose their job.
You guys are disgusting!
I mean, since I wrote the piece a few weeks ago, the convoy occupation has continued and grown to the point that PM Trudeau decided that he's going to give the Emergencies Act.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations.
I don't know how much you know about the history of all of that, but the Emergencies Act replaced what was called the War Measures Act, and
Yes.
It was implemented in the Great War first, and then in World War II, and then wasn't used again, I believe, until the current Trudeau's father used it in like 1970.
In the kind of society that you live in. Well, there's a lot of bleeding hearts around who just don't like to see people with helmets and guns. All I can say is go on and bleed, but it's more important to keep law and order in this society than to be worried about weak-kneed people who don't like the looks of a soldier. At any cost? At any cost? How far would you go with that? How far would you extend that?
Well, just watch me.
And when it was still just the War Measures Act, but that actually brought troops into the streets.
Watched on television by millions of voters, Trudeau angrily refuses to be chased away by the separatists. The police and the protesters battle below him, while the parade goes on, oblivious.
So this is completely different now. This Emergencies Act is not nearly as strong as the War Measures Act, but at the same time, we're talking about a completely different situation. No bombs have gone off. Nobody's been assassinated. Yeah. This is basically peaceful protesting that's being suppressed using all of the powers of the state.
Yeah, that's basically it. There were bouncy castles there, right? Like with children. I mean, there's been absolutely no violence. And I know, on this side, we had been the first weekend, so we saw with our own eyes that this was a whole bunch of Canadians who I would say have been the silent majority, the silent good people, who finally came out and said, you know what, we've lost enough now, and we have found now some safety maybe to get behind this group and to get behind this convoy and to really voice the fact that we don't agree anymore with what's happening. We've been on almost, a roller coaster of lockdowns for over 2 years. The vaccine passports were in every province. Many people lost their livelihoods because vaccine mandates were being put in place almost unilaterally. So, people at that point said, what do I have to lose? I can put myself behind this cause. And actually a poll came out yesterday, Robert, that showed 65% of Canadians no longer want the COVID restrictions, which is a big turnaround from what it was. And so it appears that it's more like the fringe majority that are out there than the fringe minority.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been, as you know, I grew up in Western New York. If I wasn't older than the CN Tower, I would have been born within sight of it, because you can actually see it from Rochester, New York, on a clear day. Canada to us was like another state, basically. We didn't think of it as another country per se. I mean, we used to take field trips to the Science Center in Toronto. And later on, other kinds of field trips for alcohol and other purposes. But and of course, I grew up going to many hockey games, and they play both national anthems.
Yeah.
So how can a leader attack his own people for trying to follow their own national anthem? Right?
Yeah.
They're standing on guard for Canada. How many times the true north, strong and free, right? Keep our land glorious and free. And that's all they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And this tyrant, we did a video a couple of months ago about socialist Darwinism, you might recall. And I argued in that there could be selective pressures going on for authoritarians, basically. And so this notion that the current prime minister might be the biological son of one of the worst dictators and tyrants of the 20th century, it just makes more and more sense, right? There's got to be something deeper than growing up in Canada, going to Canadian schools. How would it produce a person like this? Unless there's something in their G, or they're getting a very different type of schooling where they're being sort of told you're a member of the elite, you can do whatever you want.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve their freedoms back. Mr. Speaker, these illegal blockades that have continued to interfere with people's livelihoods, to interfere with people's daily lives, I have to interrupt the Honourable Prime Minister, so ask everyone to calm down so we can hear the answer. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the measures put forward in this Emergencies Act are proportional, are responsible, and quite frankly, are completely folded within the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The steps that we are taking are important and measured to restore order and freedoms to Canadians in this country. That is exactly what we are doing.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling horses. Trampling. Stop it. Stop it. What? Oh my God. Oh my God. Fuck down. They just trampled this lady. They just trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. Oh! There's the lady. There's the lady that was trampled. Yeah, the lady got fully trampled with a horse.
What the fuck is wrong with you?
They just got crushed by a horse.
Are you prepared to lose your truck?
Yeah, absolutely. Come take my truck, do whatever you got to do. That's fine. Well, because it's just a material possession, right? Freedom is something much more than that. So take my possessions, put me in jail, sue me, do whatever you got to do.